All right, we are live. Hello, Knockout Nation. You're watching the Knockout TV show, and I'm your host, Noel Clubb. And welcome to Spanglish Sports World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app from respective iOS and Android app stores, as the app is absolutely free. And while you download, please make sure to rate and leave us a comment, because we always want to hear from you folks. We sure do. And also, Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks. Roku and Roku sticks are also available on all smart TVs from 2016 forward. Well, welcome all the viewers watching Knockout TV show around the world. Thank you, as always, for joining us. So let's introduce today's bigger and quite awesome Knockout panel, shall we? So first off, he is an insightful boxing predictor and analyst, joining us as always from New York City. Please welcome the one and the only, the boxing prophet, Mr. Richard Solomon, to the show. Welcome, Richard. How you doing?
How's it going, guys?
Very good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. We got a little Hollywood squares with the rotating stuff, but I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah, so far my week's going great. I'm on my favorite boxing TV show of all time, and
right
this week I was going to see Def Leppard, and none of my friends wanted to go. I was very depressed because we make it an annual summer passage of going to see Def Leppard, and I couldn't convince any of my friends. Oh, we've seen them already. And then at the last second, one of my friends from high school, he's a big-time, well, I should be saying this on the air, but whatever. He's a big-time gambler, and he managed to land not only tickets, but tickets in a suite, a luxury suite, to see Def Leppard, the Steve Miller Band, and Journey. So we sat in the suite. Oh, you know, the food, the drinks, everything was comped. Yeah. And I got to be honest, I had the time of my life. The very good seats, obviously.
So you that lineup, right? That's a great lineup.
Yeah, and I didn't realize Steve Miller's the type of band where I never realized he sang those particular songs. He had a lot of hits, Steve Miller.
Absolutely. Yeah. Singer and great guitarist, songwriter.
Yeah. And he's 80 years old, and he sounded good. And Journey sang nothing but their hits, so they were incredible, better than I thought they would be.
Yeah,
the only bad thing
right there. Yeah,
the good thing about Def Leppard was every time I've seen them over the past 2 or 3 years on tour, they do about 7 songs from Hysteria and maybe only 3 from Pyromania. And knowledgeable music fans like us, we know that Hysteria was Pyromania was the better album. So, and it was they were celebrating their 40-year. Yeah, it was the 40-year anniversary. So this particular concert, I think they did 8 songs from Pyromania, including Too Late for Love, which is my favorite. And they did about 6 from Hysteria, and the rest was fairly new. But you know, they Bring It On the Heartbreak, the song that made them famous, they sang that acoustically instead of, you know, with the heavy guitar. So that kind of disappointed me. But listen, the concert was free. I was in the suite, and it was I had a great time rocking and rolling. I lost my voice in the morning. And now that was, I believe, Wednesday night. And now I'm on the Knockout TV show with my peeps on Sunday afternoon. So 1 out of 10 so far, I would rate this whole particular week a solid 9 out of 10.
Yeah, ain't bad at all. Ain't bad at all. I was going to say a couple points here. Actually, Def Leppard, Pyromania was my very first cassette. Not to date myself here, but that was my first cassette I never bought was Pyromania in '82. So that's a really, really cool. But also, you should have asked Steve Beaupre about the tickets, because he's also a Def Leppard fan, by the way.
I'm a diehard Def Leppard fan.
Yeah, so you should ask Steve Beaupre, man. Come on.
15 times I've seen them. Two countries, 7 cities.
There you go.
2 states, 2 provinces. There you go.
Professional.
Around in your face was the best, though, in Detroit, outside the Palace of Auburn Hills, actually.
Very cool. Auburn Hills, that's a beautiful place in Michigan State.
Their dressing room is below the stage, so they came up from the stage, from the bottom, right? So
very cool. So no Spinal Tap getting lost in the corridors, eh? In that case. Where's the stage? I don't know where it is. I don't know. Yeah, right on, right on. Well, hey, moving on. So it's a really big panel. Got to get going here, right? Bigger than usual. So next up, he is a humble Canadian boxing treasure. He won 6 provincial titles in the province of Ontario. He's an 8-time Canadian champion and won the bronze medal in the 86 Commonwealth Games. It was a quarterfinals in the 86 World Championships. Please welcome that one and the only from Victoria Harbour, Ontario, Steve Beaupre to the show. How's it going, man?
Good, good. I just came back from Sault Ste. Marie. My nephew got married last night or yesterday, and then we had the reception last night, and then I came back this morning, to be on the show. So I'm here.
Right on, right on. I'm glad you made it too. I'm glad you made it because I think we all had kind of busy weekends here. It seemed, or busy weeks lead up to the weekend.
And my wife has one of the guitar picks from. I can't even touch it. She won't even let me touch it. So she has the guitar pick from because we saw them in Toronto and we were front row, and I high-fived Phil. But she got the Vivian Campbell's guitar.
Oh, Vivian Campbell's.
Just look at it. I can't touch it. I can't touch it. So there you go.
Too precious. Too precious.
Yeah.
Because Phil Collins, I'll be like, yeah, you can't touch that one because that's he's the dude. He's one of the founders. So yeah, right on, right on.
Yeah. So
very cool, very cool. Hey man, once again, always a pleasure to have you here on the show. Always a pleasure. We've got lots to talk about here on the show, both Olympic and professional boxing. As we get going, get rolling here. So next up, he is a Canadian professional boxing matchmaker and manager from beautiful BC. Please welcome for the first time here on the show, Dan Margarvey to the show. Welcome, Dan. How you doing, man?
Fellas. Thank you. Appreciate it. Absolutely. It was a challenge. It was a challenge being here.
That's right.
Thanks to your main man, Eduardo, we pulled it off.
Exactly.
I think I managed to insult. Yeah, I probably managed to insult 20 different countries on my way in, but somehow we got through.
You got through it all. Right on, man. Right on. I'm glad you made it too. Well, yeah, that's like half the battle is getting on and then staying on, like real life.
Right.
It's like real life.
Yeah, I joined up with my compadres there with John David, the great John David Jackson, who's
right on.
Got a list too long to mention half the time. And then we got Dana Poulson out of Calgary, and Dana's a Paige Suchit's trainer in Canada. And so I'm just it's just an honor to be involved with that group.
Yeah.
And so we're very happy to be on the show.
Absolutely. Well, hey, man, it's an honor for us too. Going to make it more and more wider and spread wide across this country. So yeah, thanks for joining us as well, man. Real pleasure. Thank you. And is John David Jackson, can he hear us? I know he can't see us, but can he?
I believe he's here.
Don't quite see him here. I'll come back to him to see how it all goes here. All right, so we're moving on. So those are speaking of lost my page. 1 second, guys. Lost my little cue here. Oh, it's part of live TV. So yeah, we have Dana Poulson here, folks, also from Edmonton, Alberta, assistant coach to John David Jackson. So how you doing, sir? How you doing, sir? First time here on the show as well. Hey, how you doing? Dana, can you hear me?
Hey, you're muted. Maybe you're muted.
Maybe you got muted there. Oh no! Again, the joys of live TV. It always keeps you on your toes, just like our sport of boxing. Absolutely. All right. We'll come back to him shortly. And we're also missing Jaye Byard, but so we'll see how that all goes here on the show. But moving on, it's a live show. We got to keep it moving, keep it rolling.
We had John there for a bit.
Yeah, we had John. Someone lost John in the ether as well.
We see his foot now.
Yeah,
he's got a pair of Adidas on. Yeah, it's an Adidas ad.
There you go.
Put down to. We have 5 people now, right?
Yeah. It's part of the show, man. Rotating on us.
Worst comes to worst. Yeah, listen, worst comes to worst. There are 5 of us. We could just break out and sing some Def Leppard tunes.
Right? One more.
We probably bastardize a lot of good songs there, unfortunately, but that's not a bad idea. We do have a lot of content today, so don't worry. No singing today. All right. So first things I've got to mention is here, of course, the Paris Games, Olympic Games. We congratulations to our guy Wyatt Sandman Sanford as he pulled off the bronze medal win, of course, this past week. And of course, in Paris, as that's the 63.5 weight class, which is AKA for us older guys. That's 139 pounds in this case here. So he lost, unfortunately, a split decision loss against Sofiane Maya from France in the semifinals in Paris, France, obviously. But he is the first Canadian boxer to medal for Canada in 28 years, as the former was heavyweight fighter David Defiabon, who won silver medal in Atlanta in '96.
So that was a majority decision, 4-1, not 3-2.
Really?
So
wow.
Decision. So it was a 4-1, but I thought he won.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of folks too over the years too. Yeah, well said. As always, that's why you're on the show, eh? But very good. Yes. Once again, congratulations to Wyatt Sandman Sanford for his big, again, medaling for us in Canada. We haven't had a medal in 28 years, so thanks, man. Well done. Congratulations.
He fought great in the first two fights, and then won that fight. It was close.
Yeah, I agree.
It was close, but your heart goes to your Canadian, and I thought he pulled it out, but I thought I scored at 29-28, but he didn't get the nod. Yeah,
because he'll have the split decision also victory before that matchup, right? As well. So it was like, oh no. So it's getting kind of concerning. But no, I agree with you. I thought he won those fights. It was marginal. It was very close. But I would give it to him as well. But again, we're you and I are rather biased, but no harm there. No harm there. So yeah,
but he's such a good fighter and good man. Like he's so gracious, right? Yeah, superb. So he was perfect and like he was so gracious, a gracious fighter. Yeah,
absolutely.
Really
such a great ambassador for our country, and in like you're saying, too, outside the ring as well. Great ambassador for us. So, congratulations, Wyatt Sandman Sanford. Yeah, well done. So, guys, I want to. You guys are up for some controversial discussion about Olympic Games. We, of course, the obvious one, the Amon Kalev. You guys want to touch on that one? I was put out there to you guys first. Yes or no? Is that a yay or nay?
not me particularly. No. I said my piece social media wise when it first broke out, and and I just left it there. There was a lot of mixed feelings about it. I as a boxing person and watching the game since 1972, when I see somebody blowing through somebody's guard like that, it's not a question of talent; it's physical. It's
absolutely
completely physical,
100%.
and that's what I saw. And no one could say different. So I saw a physical disadvantage, flat out. I'm not talking about gender or anything. Just it was different. It was different.
Yeah,
and a lot of other boxing people, amateur guys like Sid Vandenpool felt the same way. He said he took his girls there to spar, and they felt the same way.
Yeah, 100%. Well, like I say, what you're dealing with it's as we all know, because we're in the sport, we've all coached people or someone's actually fought here on the show, and we're talking about X and Y chromosome. That's where that's what it comes down to, right? And that's the bottom line. I'm not trying to make it political or anything else, but that's what it is. It's about the chromosome. So
and here's another question about that. How do we know when somebody comes in with that precondition if there isn't any masking, a perfect segue into masking? Because they already have a pre-existing condition that allows them or identifies them of having the Y. Now, how do you know that that's not enhanced? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Also, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Richard.
No, I'm just saying that there were so many relevant fights, that took place over the past few weeks that I don't even think it's worth discussing this. I don't care if they're born a biological female. If you're born a biological female, but you also have male chromosomes, you put all the other female athletes at a complete disadvantage. There's no way. There's no way that person was a woman. It's just. It really disheartened me, and to be honest, I'm a huge boxing fan, and I didn't even watch 10 seconds of the boxing. I'm down on the Olympics in general because when I was growing up, that's what made, and this is not boxing related, it's just the human aspect of the Olympics. When I was growing up, one of my favorite things ever was the 1980 USA Olympic hockey team beating the Russians. The Miracle on Ice, as they called it. And what made that special was that all of the kids were from college. They weren't from the NHL. They were all from colleges like Boston University, Minnesota, et cetera, and they only got to play together for like 8 or 9 months, and they beat a team that was from Russia, that was professionals, that played together all their lives, that were just as good as any NHL team. And so now everyone, all professionals want to participate in the Olympics. The basketball team has professional NBA players. And listen,
Yeah, the 5 rings weren't enough, and the $50 million a season wasn't enough. You got to go take the amateurs.
I have no desire to see LeBron James and Steph Curry in the Olympics. Take the collegiate players, put them in. If they don't win the gold medals, so what? And so it's basically whatever, and listen, people will argue and say, well, other countries, the communist countries, use their professional athletes. Why shouldn't America use theirs? I say 2 wrongs don't make a right, and you're taking away from giving all these college kids a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I'm all about, having college people live their dreams and winning a gold medal for their country, not professional athletes like, LeBron James or Kevin Durant. Even with boxing, I don't need to see, I don't need to see Terrence Crawford participate in the Olympics and win a gold medal if he shows, So I got to be honest, I haven't turned into the Olympics. I haven't watched it for 1 second.
Gotcha. I think probably for myself, maybe and Steve too. I think we do watch it, do follow it, because that's kind of.
Well, I watch it, see those ones coming up in the ranks, and you can see, and I like watching the amateurs, at that level, so that the ones that are going to come on, and hopefully they're picked up with the right people in the professional game, because the professional game is crazy.
It's hard.
I don't know. Yeah. So if you see people coming in, right, and like even Wyatt, right, if he goes on now for a professional career, right, so it'd be interesting for him to see him fight professional. It's a whole different game when you turn professional. To me, I always do the analogy of that, like it's like going from a sprinter to a long distance runner, right?
Exactly.
And just that total different game.
And how many?
And there's money.
And how many times did you see a really, really decorated amateur? And I'll give 2 examples. You had Howard Davis Jr. or I'm sorry, Howard Davis Sr., who's probably one of the greatest amateur fighters I've ever seen, and yet he failed to win a world title. He had those heartbreaking losses against Jim Watt and Edwin Rosario, respectively. And then on the other side, you had Mark Breland, who probably was the most decorated amateur ever, with 1 loss. And he won a couple of belts, but he certainly didn't live up to the hype. I would say he was kind of overrated as a pro. But just to put like a little bow on this conversation, then, because I'm sure the fans want to hear us talk about all the professional fights, boxing may not be around for the 2028 Olympics. There's a strong indication that they may ban it because of the corruption and all that's been going on. So I think they're going to have a meeting with the all these international committees, I think in 2025. And then I don't know when the final decision will be made. It's sad, but it would not shock me at all if in 2028, boxing is not included in the Olympics.
I would be surprised myself, because this has been going on for a long time. This rumor. It's not new. It has been new for decades, to be honest with you. It's like every few years we hear. Honestly, but anyway,
we got 30 countries that medaled there. We got 30 countries there that medaled, right? I thought these Olympics, everybody had a chance, right? And there were some close decisions, but that's what it's about, right? But I thought they were good. Like, they're good. They could have been either way. Some of those ones could have. There was no robberies, I guess.
No controversial, really. Except for a couple obvious ones took place, but that's not the story.
And you get 30. I don't think 30 countries have medals in the boxing event.
Diversity.
In 30, I think it's 13 or 14. No,
yeah,
13
well,
weight.
Exactly, Dan. Yeah, exactly. Steve.
One good thing is what Steve touched on is the diversity. Whereas before we didn't see it, we saw it monopolized. And the IOC, I'm sorry, the IOC is incredibly corrupt. It's all about, and it's not like it used to be. Touching to what Richard said, we used to get to see the platform for the guys before they turned pro. Before all the hype are the like real hype, the good stuff. We saw them like Sugar Ray Leonard come to life in the Olympics. Yes. A lot of us didn't know who he was.
Right? Yeah, shined, big time shined.
Yeah, and there was a lot of great guys, and right up to the 90s. I mean, and if you really look at it, people make such a big deal about the Olympics, but the window for the Olympics wasn't very long. And Muhammad Ali really started it, and then from there, it started snowballing in a productive degree, and then it started dying out after, I guess, the 90s. With the Lewis and those guys, it started tailing off, and then now it doesn't seem to matter if you medal. It doesn't really make a big difference in your career like it did in the 80s and 90s and 70s, and so
it could be a stepping stone for a good professional career. And then some guys at the amateurs, they're not good amateurs. Their style is so and they become champion.
The thing that bothered me too is like, what is it about? We had great mentors in Canadian amateur boxing, but what was it about our culture in Canada, more so than the Americans, that our coaches never wanted us to turn pro? Do you remember that, Steve? They don't talk about pro. Don't talk. It's like, why not? I mean, every other athlete goes into pro boxing, so goes into the pro event if they have one. Why don't we? We were always discouraged from doing that. And I think some of our coaches had bad experiences. I was with Elio Ayas originally, and he was in Rocky Marciano's training camp. He went to New York briefly, fought in St. Nick's Arena, and he came back, and he was just homesick, really. But he probably could have maintained a career, but he felt like I think he felt like a fish out of water. Our culture is very different in some respects, and a lot of our Canadians back in the day, they would take off to England and take off to a few places to try to make a career to the States or England. What happened was, and they would go alone or they would go with one trainer or something. It was very hard to do, and then they were used up. They were like treated like they were treated badly in sparring. They were stacked on. A lot of different stuff happened to them, so they really didn't have a chance. And sometimes, even if they were better than the guy they were in camp with, they were suppressed because that wasn't the goal. They were just, it didn't matter how talented they weren't coming from the right places. So
right.
So
it's like fodder for these guys coming in, basically.
Like even Scotty Olsen, he went to the States to fight.
Right.
His was amazing.
Talks about that. Right? On this show, we talked about it.
Yeah, he was a really good story because he ended up with Top Rank. I mean, at that weight, a little guy from Canada making it with Top Rank. I mean, unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, huge.
So an incredible story for the Bulldog because that's really unusual for Canadian boxing.
So true, right? So it's like the needle in the haystack. It's so
I love sparring with him. I love sparring with him.
And no one is more deserving of Scotty. What a wonderful guy he is.
You would when you talk to him, you'd never know he was a fighter, and the style of fighter he was. He was just an animal in the ring. You get outside the ring, he's the complete opposite. Just the softest, nicest guy you ever want to talk to.
Big time. Yeah.
He kept me on my toes. I had to keep moving and not stand in front of him.
No, he was.
The amateur game was like that back then. You had to move, with the fighting the Europeans.
Yet he was a perfect. He was a perfect match for the pros because of his style. So he wasn't. He wasn't the guy. Like he gravitated to that pocket fighting right away, and he used his strength to his advantage. And for that weight class, he was damn strong.
Wasn't he?
He
was dynamite.
That's what his coach knew, that I gotta let him go. So he gave, he had other trainers that worked with him, right?
Yeah.
So Jerome Coffey worked with him, right? So
unfortunately, by the time he got to Cabrahal, time they made that fight, Cabrahal insisted on that lower weight, and you can't go back and weight, and those pounds and those little guys are such a minute amount, and you could see his eyes drained at the weigh-in, just drained, and he did great up until what weight cuts are like, right up until a point of like the late hard luck rounds, and that's where the wheels started coming off. Yeah, but boy, was he giving it to Cabrahal up until that point, and then took if I remember correctly, took a deadly body shot to the liver.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's the way she goes in sport, eh?
Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but he was dynamite. I love Scotty. We all love Scotty here on the show.
Yeah, he was.
Well, let's move on to some world professional boxing news here, boys. Here in the halfway point of the show already. But here we go. So first, really, it's our first topic here in world professional boxing news, right? It is talking about Terence Crawford, 36-year-old Terence Crawford, who went the distance for the first time in nearly a decade and picked up his fourth title in as many divisions. And that's for the junior middleweight title against. That was actually last weekend, folks. When we fought Israel Medrioff last Saturday, August the 3rd, at the BMO Stadium in Los Angeles. And Crawford did make $2.5 million on this bout, as a little side point for you. So knockout panel, first off, what do you think of Terence Crawford's performance? If you've seen the fight, what do you think of his performance? But also, more importantly, what is next? Who is next for Crawford? Over to Richard first.
Yeah, I thought it was definitely, Terence Crawford's worst performance as a pro. People were sleeping on Madrimov. I wasn't. Madrimov had a very decorated amateur career.
Yeah.
He destroyed Magomed Kurbanov to win I believe it was the WBA junior middleweight title. And, he brought a lot to the table. I thought it was a very close fight. I actually scored the fight 7-5 for Crawford. I think he pulled it out in the last 2 rounds. I had it 5 rounds apiece. And I think Crawford showed too much respect for Madrimov. When Crawford engaged, he would throw violent combinations and he would get Madrimov's attention, but he seemed a little bit a little less hesitant to open up more. Madrimov would land these sneaky, quick counter rights. And, Bud Crawford was visibly, I believe it was his left eye, his eye was marked up. He was taking shots. And I was arguing with people because you have all the Bud fans like Shakur Stevenson and all of his cronies. Oh, Crawford won 9 out of the 12 rounds, 8 out of the 12 rounds. I think it's silly. I'm no CompuBox guy. I don't believe in CompuBox statistics. My eyes tell me who won fights. But if you subscribe to that theory, if you take a look at the statistics, Crawford wound up throwing about 150 more punches the whole fight and only outlanded him by about 11 shots. And 10 out of the 12 rounds, 10 of the 12 rounds were decided by 3 punches or less, meaning that Crawford either outlanded Madrimov by 3 shots or Madrimov outlanded Crawford by 3 shots in 10 of the 12 rounds. So if you score at 116, 112, or 117, 111 Crawford, that just means you're giving Crawford every close round. And I thought Madrimov was doing great. He was landing sneaky right hands at will. Crawford seemed very perplexed by Madrimov's style. And I think what won Crawford the fight at the end of the day was his pure athleticism and his ring IQ and the fact that he knew the fight was up for grabs in the last 2 rounds and he took it from Madrimov and pulled it out 115, 113. One more thing I'd like to add also is that a lot of boxing purists and boxing pundits say, well, in order to take the title from a champion, you have to beat him. I don't believe that at all. You could say Bud won, but he didn't beat him. Remember that famous scene from Rocky II where, Apollo's trainer didn't want any part of Rocky in the rematch. And he said to the trainer, do you think I won? And the trainer said, you got the decision. And Apollo slammed his fist on the table and said, yeah, man, I won, but I didn't beat him. That sort of reminded me of Crawford Madrimov. Crawford won the fight, but it was so competitive, you can make a case that he really didn't, beat Madrimov in a style that Crawford is accustomed to beating a lot of his opponents. And I think at the end of the day, both will look at this fight and they'll both shake their heads in the mirror. Crawford will say to himself, I should have engaged more, I should have threw more punches. And Madrimov will say to himself, the fight was there for the taking, and the last 2 rounds, I just didn't show up. But overall, even though it was a technical fight, it was a great chess match. It intrigued me to no end because I actually thought Bud Crawford was on the verge of losing. But he did show tremendous character in pulling out the last 2 rounds. And like I said, he's now a champion in 4 different weight classes. And he won the fight 115-113 on my scorecard.
Very good. Well said as always. And yeah, that was a big step up too for him in the weight category. But yeah, well said. Steve, Mr. Beaupre, what's your thoughts on performance by Crawford?
I thought he did lackluster because moving up, right? He didn't have the power. He doesn't. He had the speed.
Absolutely.
He had the speed, and that's what when those guys come up, they got the speed. But he didn't have the power. I don't
matching power.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to hurt the Madrimov. And it's going to be right. That's not. I just didn't think. And yeah, I don't think if he fights a good middleweight, he's gonna get knocked out.
I think so. He's gonna get hurt for sure.
Hagler would destroy him.
Yeah.
Marvin Hagler would destroy him.
Absolutely. So busy and powerful. And sneaky.
You would have traded. You would have tried to trade with him. Are you crazy? You would have killed him.
No, yeah, not even close. So true, so true. But again, different era.
Whereas Leonard was good on the feet too, and could move, and had the speed. So I don't know. Superb.
Yeah, well said, man. Danny Mac, what's your thoughts on Terence Crawford's performance, and who should be fighting next, in your opinion?
Well, moving up in weight, a big question. Moving up to a guy like that. Now, Madrimov, not a lot of pro experience, but he didn't really need it with that pedigree, with the background from the Eastern Bloc, Uzbekistan. They're all solid. They all took over basically. There's they kind of took over for the Americans a lot. Coming out of the more recent Olympics, and the fallout of the computer scoring system really hurt American style boxing. I feel, and especially in the heavier divisions. So we started seeing a lot more Eastern Bloc guys come out and doing well, and they come out of the super boxing and all that stuff. Golovkin and all this. So this guy's right in that mix. So he's a really good fighter, and he kept it amateur. He kept moving. He was a constantly moving target. So he was a big, strong moving target. Crawford's got timing issues. What's worse for a guy with timing issues than a guy that's constantly moving? And the guy's fit. So Crawford wasn't going to reach out of himself to go after this guy that's a moving target that hits hard, that's stronger, bigger than him. You see the back on him; he's huge.
Exactly.
So Crawford would be nuts to get too macho with him, and Crawford clearly has some timing issues. How could he not? There's no amount of sparring that's going to fix that. It's fighting that fixes that. So so it is what it is. I mean, Crawford stepping up to where he stepped up to. A lot of people are deceived by that because they see 10, 11 pro fights on the guy, but it doesn't matter. Stepping up in weight, stepping up, that kind of pedigree, and you're dealing with a really sophisticated fighter.
Absolutely.
And Beterbiev is like that too. Very sophisticated. He's got a lot of movement, and one fight to the next, you see something different coming from him. Like, I never knew Beterbiev could have that kind of footwork. Look at his footwork.
Yeah.
When he was fighting that puncher, what's the kid's name? Was it Brown? No, after Brown.
Yeah.
Who do you fight after Brown?
I forgot who that is now.
But the guy was this big white kid, solid puncher.
Joe Smith, I think you talk.
But that's what comes with those guys that fight 300 fights, man. They fight everybody. They know all the styles.
Now there's pros and cons to that. You get shop worn in the amateurs. Or you cut like David Reed. By the time David Reed went pro, he had one eye going this way and one eye going that way. So it is a balance. But some of these guys are coming out of the amateurs just right. I think
Yeah, wear and tear on it. Yeah.
And for all intent purposes, the war against Felix Trinidad pretty much ended David Reed's career for all intent purposes.
Right. And think of all the fights before that. And same with Mr. Mix. Mr. Mix, they say 500 some odd amateur fights. Now, these guys were like in Canada, Beaupre would probably be no more, but in Canada, traditionally, a lot of us would fight, you know, in smokers and maybe one tournament a month. So we might get 2 fights a month, right? I wasn't fighting that often, but I mean, I would have like 12 fights a year, maybe 15 at the most when I was really young. So some of the
65 amateur fights. So
yeah, and some guys would fight a lot, but some of those Americans, they were fighting in tournaments. They had a lot more tournaments going on.
You'd have to win. If you won the tournament, you fought maybe 5 times.
Yeah,
and you know,
5 times.
I so well put it in one weekend. Yeah. Yeah,
and in our culture, when I was like, I started boxing in '72. We didn't have multiple rings at tournaments that I remember.
Right.
Like the Americans would have 3 or 4 or 5 rings.
Golden Glove, 3 rings. 3 rings.
Yeah, it's like what the hell's going? Like I mean, and you'd hear the bells going off on the other thing. It's like I went to one of them.
We started doing that too, and
we
started doing that, and it was hard to keep track of, right? Because the bell and the whistle and the chime.
Well, I'm from BC, so we're not as fast paced as you guys. But
we had that in Ontario because
we're slow.
But that was at the peak. I don't think they do that anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You still do with you go to Brampton Cup where you go to provincials. They have multiple rings. So you still get the you know the multiple bells going off. Oh, is that our ring or their ring? You do get crying crossed.
Well, I remember one of my sparring partners at one point before this happened was Ron Paskey. And Paskey,
right.
Paskey was a really aggressive guy. He didn't know how to spar. He would fight you. He fought you the same in the gym as he'd fight you in a tournament. It's like so, and he left the best part of himself in the tournament. And we're in the basement of the Astoria, and that was the dungeon. And a lot of people know what a meat thing that was. That was like a meat factory down there. There was the only guys that were protected were the pros. The pros were protected. If you got over on a pro, a Lodgedai or Dowling would pull this guy out, and then but if you were an amateur, you were going in there in the fire all the time. So some of the pros had it softer down there than the amateurs did. But
was that Dale Walters' gym?
Dale Walters ended up down there.
Yeah.
How it started was the Astoria was, as far back as I know, was by the Boyce family. Right.
Okay.
And the Boyce family had it in the 60s and 70s. And then in the mid 70s, late 70s, Elio Ayas lost his gym in North Van, the Eagles, and he couldn't find another one in North Van. So he ended up over, and the Boyce family graciously gave it to Elio. Elio just didn't like the commute. He was getting older. He put his time in. So he turned it over to his protege, which was George Angelo-Manis.
Yeah,
George and Alex ran the gym, basically. Yeah. It was mostly George, but Alex was involved. And Alex was also an official. Well, I guess I came down there in 78. I took time. I mean, after the North Van gym closed, I didn't know where to go. I ended up at Pat O'Reilly's, the Irishman.
Gotcha.
And then I ended up briefly at Astoria. And when I first went to Astoria, there was really no one at my weight. There was a couple of native kids from down Tough Park. They were tough kids, but there was nobody there. And I came back about a year later, and then Dale was there, Paskey was there, Ray Abraham was there. There was a bunch of guys my size that were there, and it was really rough. I mean, you had to be really slick like Dale, or you were in the gym wars like all the time.
We trained at that gym a couple times when I trained at the Olympic training camp.
Wow.
George brought us. Well, Dale wanted to train a couple days because we had days off, but he wanted to train, so we went over there, and it was pretty. It was. So I was glad to get to train at his gym. I have a couple of pictures.
Yeah. George was a character, man. He was a character.
He was a lawyer.
Yeah, he was a lawyer, and he'd go to his. There's one story when he went to court, a big case, and he went to court with 2 different shoes on. The judge goes, "You got 2 different shoes on." He goes, "Oh yeah, I was getting ready." He's eccentric, but
Yeah,
hell,
yeah.
hell of a boxing guy. A lot of people loved him.
Oh, he was good.
Yeah, but it was rough down there. It was it was a rough gym. It was a rough gym.
Well, I think Geronimo Bai came from there too, eh?
Yeah, he did.
Geronimo Bai.
And Paskey ended up. Paskey was going from BC to Hamilton.
Yeah.
And he had that connection. And so when the tragedy happened, he was in Hamilton. But from what I understand was that's when they changed the route. You couldn't fight. We would fight up to 3 times a day.
Yeah, yeah.
You couldn't fight more than once a day after that. That's when the rules changed, at least in Canada.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if it changed internationally, but for Canadians it did.
Yeah, I think they went all across the board a day.
Yeah, and I think some ways it was worse than pro boxing because if you did have to fight in a tournament like where you fought 3 times a day or could fight 3 times a day, you start lumping up, and then you got to be instead of just going through it all at once, then you go back in the fire again, and it was pretty competitive. Paskey was in there with Ron Pasick, the Johnson brothers.
Yeah, okay, so those 2 guys, I always got those 2. I traveled with that.
It was easy to mix those 2 up. They're both blonde and both,
I was wondering, how is the one that got injured there?
Paskey or
Paskey.
His older brother Peter died suddenly.
Yeah,
which was going to be the real caretaker because the parents had passed away. And so they had a sister. I don't know what really happened to Ronnie, but Ronnie was in bad shape right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Blind and things like that. So so Pete was taking care of him as best I know. And then Pete died rather suddenly, I think, of a heart attack. Don't quote me, but it was something like that.
Heavy stuff.
But, all good local fighters from the region. And then Paskey had a East Coast connection or Eastern connection in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And, but he didn't. Paskey was a hard guy. He fought hard every time. It was all go. And it was in the gym or wherever, right? So
100% all the time. Really.
And if I could, just for a second, guys, if I can get back to Crawford, I just wanted to mention a point. Madrimov was a physically strong guy. He sort of imposed his will. I was actually shocked that Bud Crawford, the whole fight, he never switched to southpaw. If you notice, he fought orthodox the whole fight. And that's very, very uncommon for Bud not to switch between orthodox and southpaw. That's how much he respected Madrimov. And I was thinking, when was the last time Bud was actually in the ring with someone who had a style similar to Madrimov, who was, a very physical, strong guy that could box a little bit, and then you look back, Sean Porter was on the back line of his career when Crawford defeated him. Kell Brook was shot. Errol Spence, we all know, got into the car accident, had multiple eye surgeries. So as dominating as that performance was, it wasn't really surprising. You would have to go all the way back to 2019 when Crawford fought Kavaliauskas to find a style similar to Madrimov. And look what happened in that fight. In round 3, and I remember it like it was yesterday, Kavaliauskas clipped Crawford. Crawford held on for dear life and fell to the canvas. It was clearly a knockdown, and the refs ruled it a slip. So you can make a case that obviously that was the only time Bud Crawford was knocked down in his career, but the referee, ruled it a slip. It was a clear knockdown, and Crawford would later knock down Kavaliauskas twice in the 7th, and I believe he went on and scored a decisive 9th-round knockout. But like Madrimov, he had style issues with Kavaliauskas because of his strength and his jab, and that European style. I suspect now, Crawford and Canelo, after this performance, they've been totally put on hold. Canelo is fighting with the Sheikh from Saudi Arabia, demanding too much money to fight Bud. And Crawford's accepted, at least temporarily for now, that's not in his game plan. If you saw the post-fight interview, he was like, money talks. And, before he was like, oh, I want Canelo. But I think after this performance against Madrimov, cooler heads prevailed. And I think the plan for Bud now is to unify all the belts at 154 and become the only male. Well, he already is the only male fighter to hold undisputed titles in two weight classes, but he wants to be undisputed at 154, thus making him the only fighter to be undisputed in three different weight classes. And styles make fights, and simply no one in that division at 154 has that Madrimov style. If you take a look, Sebastian Fora, I think would be, as even though he's a big guy, he's tailor made for Crawford. I see Crawford destroying Fundora. You have Tim Zhu, who has a lot of work to do. I think Crawford could beat him. And last night, in what was arguably the fight of the year for 2024, Virgil Ortiz won a vacant belt at 154 in an absolute throwback war against Boachuk. And I think that took so much out of him that in his post-fight interview, they were saying, do you want to unify against Bud? And he said, for now, I would rather face the winner of Errol Spence, Sebastian Fundora, which I don't even know if that fight's taking place. So it's not like any of these guys, it's not like Virgil Ortiz is looking to fight Bud. But,
Right.
money talks, and at the end of the day, Virgil Ortiz, if he needs to take a couple of more tune-ups. I don't think he's ready for Bud now based on the damage that Boachek inflicted on him last night. But there's clearly no one at 154 that can test Crawford the way Madrimov did. So I fully expect him to be the undisputed junior middleweight champion soon. And the sad thing is, and we've discussed this on the show so many times, the only guy I think within that weight range from 147 to 154 that poses any sort of threat to Bud is Jerome Boots Ennis. And he's already stated that he's not moving up to 154, that his goal is to become the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. So until, and you know what? It makes it a more attractive fight. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, both fighters accomplish their wishes, and Bud becomes the undisputed champion at 154, and Boots becomes the undisputed champion at 147. Then the fans will be clamoring for a Crawford Boots fight. It's just kind of sad, because I think Boots is the only guy in the vicinity of those two weight classes that poses any sort of threat to Bud. But we're not going to see that fight anytime soon.
Yeah, Boots has a lot of potential.
Leonard.
Boots has a lot of potential at 147 still, and it's got to marinate for Boots, not so much for Crawford, because Crawford didn't have the time. But Crawford had a lot of holdups, much like Ward, right? And that could kill a career in a sense. You could lose the best part of a guy's career, like with Ali. They say there was that 3-year window that they lost.
In the wartime.
Exactly. Yeah. And with Boots has got to get there. Boots has got, he's pretty good. He's got nothing really to prove. He's got a lot to prove in the respect of fulfilling his career, but they're at different places, unfortunately. And I think with Magnumov, I think if you were to repeat that fight, they do a rematch, Bud's going to do much better in that rematch.
Absolutely.
But it's only natural he's going to have a rough fight with that fight. The style and everything else, when you take it all into scope, and a lot of it's, second guessing now, hindsight. But the point is, Bud would do much better with even him if the timing was it. So when they rematch that fight, if they do rematch that fight, Bud's going to do better.
It's interesting because he wanted no part of the rematch. When they interviewed Crawford, he said, I won decisively. I don't want to rematch. And it sort of reminded me of when Oscar, I mean, it's a different weight class, but I remember when Oscar De La Hoya struggled with Sweet Pea Whitaker, so much so that a lot of people, including myself, thought that Pernell Whitaker beat De La Hoya, just like I'm sure there were a few fans that were thinking to themselves, Madrimov either won the fight 7-5 or deserved a draw. They asked De La Hoya, don't you think Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, this was on HBO, of course, don't you think he deserves a rematch? And De La Hoya said, no, his style's too cute for me. I'm better off against fighters who are willing to engage me. And, Bud Crawford pretty much said the same thing. Madrimov has a style that's not good for him. He wants to look good. So I'm 99.9% sure that there's no way you're going to see Crawford in the ring with Magnemorph again.
Right.
Unless Magnemorph wins a title, then Bud will have no
Of course,
choice because he wants the
situation
uniform.
And Magnemorph doesn't really move the needle. There's got to be a star out there that he'd rather fight. That risk, when you factor in risk reward, what Magnemorph doesn't really. He's a high risk. What reward? You know, I mean, I don't see the really reward for and I think that's what Crawford's, without saying it, I think that's what Crawford's really alluding to. He's all about the business now. Who moves the needle the most? Who's going to make him the most money? Is it going to be a rematch with Magnemorph? I don't think so. So Boots Ennis would be one that everybody would be clamoring for. And maybe it's just us, but I think the North American and things that maybe there's a paradigm shift with the Middle East, but with the Saudi Arabia, but the paradigm is we identify with Bud fighting a guy like Boots more than we identify with a lot of the Eastern Bloc guys.
True. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
You know,
well said.
But some of them break through. Like, I mean, Golovkin was really popular. Lomachenko was very popular. I don't think
but they came up through that you know, they came over and did it.
They came over and you know, so there's some that are more popular than others, and I don't think Magnemorph is as popular. He hasn't
absolutely not.
Star quality is not there.
Yeah, and I think Sebastian Fundora is a champion, but he doesn't carry the same popularity that like a Tim Zhu or a Virgil Ortiz Jr. can carry.
But the weird thing about him is, and maybe it's because we're the boxing guys, but I found Fundora when he was coming up, I found him exciting because I would be terrified to be his trainer or manager. I'd be a nervous wreck because I would hate to see a guy waste all the potential he has in his freak body and taking chances away. He's taken. Same with Paul Williams. Paul Williams would walk into punches and follow punches around. Fundora is fun to watch. His name, he's got fun. He's got fun in his name. It's Fundora, but at the end of the day, he's fun to watch and he's exciting. He's a freak. He's a freak of nature, and yet he wants to fight in the pocket and stuff like that. I don't recommend it, but like when he got caught, but it is what it is. But I think he'd just walk right in. He'd end up being in Crawford's wheelhouse on some level. But he's always dangerous. He's a huge guy, punches with a lot of leverage. So he's a dangerous guy. And if he'd only keep guys out there, keep them at
make fights,
he'd make things maybe very one-sided. But it's not in his DNA to do that, I guess. So
right,
he's not doing it. Yeah.
Well, I like that, Danny Mac. There, the puts the Fundora. I like that. Right on.
Yeah, he's got a lot of fun, and he spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest. So a lot of guys that I know from this region know him. So guys from right next door in Washington State talk about him all the time. And when he was coming up, another matchmaker I know said to me, he goes, his dad was saying it's not the older brother, it's actually him that you got to watch. And sure enough, that's what it was. He came up and you know what it's like, Steve, to be fighting those tall, skinny guys. They hit like mules. Some of them.
Oh my God!
Where's that power coming from?
Yeah, they hit. Man,
you got these really muscular little guys, and they can't punch. And you see that in the nightclubs too. You see some beefy guy. And he can't even punch. He doesn't even hurt. It doesn't even hurt to get hit with the guy. You put your hands up. And some guy in this baggy shirt will walk up and bang. All of a sudden, like it hurts like hell, right? Some of those guys just have the punch, and it's all about the leverage and the kind of what they get on their shots. And
get inside on them, and it's hard.
Yeah, and then you run into the odd one that can fight on the inside too, like Tony Pep.
Oh yeah.
On the inside, he'll fight you on the inside and the outside. It doesn't matter. So you work that hard. You're exhausted to get in there. You finally think, okay, I'm in the pocket. I'm where I need to be, and this guy's hitting me with uppercuts that go to 6'4". So
it's like, what's going on here?
It's like there's no world. You have no world there. There's no world where you can be functional.
Like an octopus, all angles everywhere. Up and down.
and based on what we've been saying for the past 15, 20 minutes, I don't even think a Fundora Errol Spence fight is coming off. There are rumors that Spence needs more time to train. His injuries haven't fully healed. So if your team, Yeah, if you're Team Crawford, believe me, obviously you want to fight Virgil Ortiz or a Tim Tszyu. If I'm Team Crawford, the first thing I do is sign to face Fundora because Fundora, you know, he's whatever 6'10", however he doesn't fight tall. He was in a life and death fight with Erickson Lubin, who really doesn't have much of a chin. But I think Lubin managed to drop Fundora. Then Fundora was way ahead on the scorecards and got knocked unconscious by Brian Mendoza. So
Wrap it up,
I just think, yeah, I don't think Fundora lasts 7 rounds. I think Crawford's going to go out there to make a statement. And trust me when I tell you, he'll dispatch Fundora within 7 rounds easily.
Very good. Well, hey, guys, we're out of time.
Can we touch on one thing?
Make it fast.
Jaye Byard, he's fighting September 14th in Montreal.
Right on.
Fighting another Nova Scotian, Shane Upshaw.
Right on.
That's going to be at the Bridgerweight limit, 201 to 223. And I just want to give the
Canadian title,
give the fight length for the fight if anyone's getting on a pay-per-view.
That's for Canadian title.
No titles on the line. We can only make it for 8.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so there's going to be that show is also going to have Jessica Camara defending her WBC gold title against another Canadian girl, Bonnie Hunter.
Yeah,
out of Ontario. So that'll be an interesting. That's at the top of the show, and Jaye's 3rd from the top.
Very good, very good.
And it's Doogie Binoche's show, and it's going to be streamed on Fight 2. So it's
Fight 2?
Yeah, so it's Fighto. It's FIGHTO .
Gotcha.
So that's going to be where it's going to be live streamed on.
And that's what's the date again? The date was
September 14th, and it's Doogie Binoche's show.
Very good, very good.
I think it's called Fight Club. His name is production. Yeah.
Very good. Well, hey man, thanks, Danny Mac.
All right.
Great plug for, of course, the great Jaye Byard, of course.
Jaye,
matchup. And thanks, Mr. Steve Beaupre over in Victoria Harbor. And in New York City, of course, boxing prophet Richard, Mr. Richard Solomon.
We lost John David Jackson and Dana, but they have another great Canadian kid, super flyweight, out of Calgary, Alberta, living and training in Miami, Florida now with some of the greats, Lenores and John David Jackson. And this kid is the next big thing. You should see him when he comes up. He's probably gonna own 4 weight divisions. He's phenomenal.
His name again?
His name is Paige Suchet. They call him Hollywood.
Yes.
And he's 5'10", 5'11", but he's a super flyweight. And he's like Fundora. He's got kind of a freak build. And he's talented. So he can go as low as 212. He go as low as 112.
Yeah, 112.
And he's a Muslim, so he observes Ramadan and he fasts. So when he's coming out of a fast, he's down to 112. Wow. And he's a big frame kid, so he's going to be really exciting to watch. And ideally, they want him to come up through all the weight classes. So they would like him to maximize 112. Right up to God knows 147.
Wow!
You know this kid could go several weight classes, and he's from Calgary, Alberta.
They're right on. Oh, West
and the people around him are solid boxing people. They really know their stuff. So and then he's got contacts in Florida and other places. So one of the few Canadian kids coming up that's got connections. Like people like usually when we go somewhere, we're completely a fish out of water.
Right.
We're hoping people don't wreck us in some other town, but this kid's got people that like him. He's very, very marketable, so we're looking forward to seeing him as well.
So look out for Paige. Very good.
I'll keep you guys posted.
Thank you again. That's awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, boys, and thanks, folks, for watching. Check out Zingo TV for all the news. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it, love it, man. Thanks again, folks. See you again real soon. Thanks, Danny Mac.
Thanks for being on. Thanks, guys. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.